Hello seamsters! In this video I'm going to talk about an issue that I keep seeing when I'm perusing online marketplaces like Facebook Marketplace these days for used sewing machines. I'm hoping that some of you watching are going to be people who have a machine that you want to sell and are maybe looking for some advice on how to maximize what you can sell your machine for, or make that sale go more easily, or maybe get an idea that maybe you should just donate it or throw it away. For those of you who watch this stuff regularly, this might be just a video of commiseration about some of the stuff we see on ads that's frustrating. Or maybe you'll learn something new. So hopefully you enjoy this content. I guess we'll see. So I guess let's cut right to the chase. One of the first problems I see is often I'll see a picture of this. Just the table, and the person selling the machine doesn't even bother to open it up to show the machine inside. So occasionally I've seen this and then maybe a picture shot from underneath. If the photo is just of the table, it's hard to tell if the person selling it is selling an empty table, because a lot of times these things are empty, or if there is a machine inside, and what machine is inside the table makes a huge difference on whether or not it might be worth someone pursuing. I'm going to use this machine as an example. These tables are all pretty similar. Basically, there's a tabletop that can fold open, and that reveals a machine folded inside. As you can see, you really can't tell a whole lot about it at the moment. And for some reason, a lot of people tend to stop at this point. That's it. They open this up and show you the machine, and they don't go to the additional step of actually unfolding the machine so it's on top of the table so you can get a good look at it. When you're looking at it from here, all you're seeing is the back of the machine, which sometimes isn't all that informative about what kind of machine it is or what features it might have. There's no trick to pulling the machine out. On this table and many others, there's a flap in the front that just folds up, and then you just have to grab the machine and fold it up, let this fall, and that's it. It's not difficult at all, and I've seen and owned a number of tables like this. I've never encountered one where there was any real trick to getting the machine out. They're usually not particularly heavy. I certainly understand if somebody lacks the physical strength to get the machine out, or has some other reason why they can't, sure. But this is just a common thing. So now that this machine is out, we can see a lot more about it. Although, depending on your knowledge of vintage machines, this may still not be enough to make a purchasing decision. Hi, do you want to come up? We're making a video, do you want to help? So this particular machine is a Singer 348. It's a nice vintage sewing machine that I've had for some time. Hi. Hi, buddy. Come here. If you're not a long-time viewer, this is Bobbin. He's very helpful when it comes to making sewing videos. So this is a Singer 348. It's a good vintage machine. I wouldn't necessarily consider this to be a particularly valuable machine, but hi. Good boy. But it's a good one, and just being able to see it out, this color is a kind of a dead giveaway, but gives me an idea. If I see this ad, I kind of know what I'm looking at. There's quite a few machines in the same family of this one that are the same color and look very similar, and maybe better or worse depending on their age, but at least it's a start. You're my boy. One of the problems with these vintage machines is they often don't have a model number or a name on them. I'm trying to remember if this says, yeah, this does have model 348 and kind of small lettering on the front. So I guess the next part of my advice to someone selling a machine is once you've got it out of the table where it's visible and you can take better pictures of it, look to see if there's any model number. It may not be on the front. It could be anywhere. But if you don't have a manual for it or some other knowledge of what model it is, that can be very helpful for someone like me who might be looking for a particular machine, and perhaps it, say this is a 348 but I want a 338 for some reason, and at least knowing this is a 348, I can not bother you by sending you a message and asking for you to look for the model number and stuff. I can just skip past it. Or on the other hand, if I really want a 348, then I know I want to contact you. You were such a good boy, buddy. When it comes to like the older black cast iron Singer machines, this may be true of other machines of that era, but definitely the Singer ones, there's another issue, and I'll take you over to one of mine and show you. Okay, buddy. Good boy. Okay. This is my Singer 1200. It's kind of a Singer 201, but it's a special case. Maybe I'll talk more about that in a minute. But this is a very rare machine. But it looks just like a Singer 201. It's a Singer 201, which is a very, very good machine, but a lot more common. But this is true of, I think, all of these Singers of this vintage. Maybe not all, but a lot of them. But down here by this spool pin, there is a plate with a combination of letters and numbers on it. And often in ads, I'll see people refer to this as the model number of the machine, trying to be helpful and let the potential buyer know what model it is. That's not the model number. This is the serial number of the machine. And in terms of identifying what model of machine it is, it's completely useless. Maybe not completely, but it's not something that you can look at and say, oh, that's a 1200 or a 201 or whatever it is. So while that information is helpful, and I'll explain in a second why, if you're looking for the model on these machines, you're probably not going to find it. I think on some, occasionally it's on there. I've seen a plate below this plate here, occasionally with a model number on it. I don't know why that wasn't done all the time, but it seems to be more often than not that there is no model number identifying this machine. So if this was a Singer 201-2, it wouldn't say that anywhere on it. Now there are ways I can identify this machine, and I'll show you an ad later that kind of illustrates what I'm talking about. But the person looking at the machine who only knows, well, that's a black cast iron machine from that era, I wonder if that's, say, a Singer 201. If they don't know the things to look for to identify one, the number's not really going to help them. So if you know, then it's best to post it. And if you don't know, there's ways you can research it, or I would just say don't say what model it is and say you don't know. That's probably the safest bet. As far as this serial number is concerned, though, for Singer machines at least, there is a website. I'll put a link to it in the description. It's called ISMAX. I forget what it stands for, but you can look up that serial number and determine the age of the machines. So I have a bunch of these. I think this one's a 1953 or something. I've got a 1936 and maybe a 1937 and a couple others that I haven't dated yet. But that is interesting to know. So you can use that information to look up the age of the machine. So you don't see a lot of Sailrite machines on the used marketplace. I don't see a lot of used Sailrite machines on the marketplace. But occasionally when I do see them or the models that look just like them, I often see people refer to them as industrial machines. They're really not industrial machines. They're meant for home use. They're certainly capable of very heavy projects. You could call it a heavy-duty machine if you want. You could call it, some people refer to them as semi-industrial. I don't think that's really a thing. But it's probably best if you are selling one of these and you don't know anything about it, it's best to know that it's not really an industrial machine, just to kind of avoid confusion. It may not really matter that much. But I would say that also applies to things like this old Singer or lots of vintage sewing machines. I see the terms heavy duty, industrial strength, things like that tossed around willy-nilly. These are just domestic sewing machines that are intended for home use. They're certainly very tough and very capable machines, but that's not the same as being industrial. And this is a bit of a buyer beware, but I've talked about this in many, many other videos, but just because you see a machine like this one, maybe the seller will sew a strip of leather with it to show that it can sew leather. That doesn't mean this is a leather working machine. Just because it can sew some thick canvas may not mean it's up to the task that you have in mind. So you really need to understand what these domestic sewing machines limitations are and what it is you're actually looking for. And don't read in an ad that somebody selling a machine that doesn't really know much about it, says it's industrial strength. That means it's okay for you to use to make a cover for your RV or something. In several ads, I've seen people say that their machine can turn, turning the hand wheel, but that the needle mechanism doesn't go up and down. And good for them for giving the hand wheel a turn to make sure that the machine is loosened up. That's informative. One thing you might look for if you are selling a machine and you're not really familiar with how these things work, if you know to turn the hand wheel, always turn it towards you. There are very few exceptions to that, but in general, most machines, you turn the hand wheel towards you. But also on a lot of these vintage machines, there's a clutch knob here on the end of the hand wheel. If that's disengaged, turning the hand wheel won't do anything to the mechanism. So if you are experiencing that as a seller, that you've got a machine, you tried to turn the hand wheel but nothing's happening, see if that knob can be tightened, and if it can, that might solve your problem. And that's helpful to know because, you know, a machine that's not known to be working may not be as sellable or valuable as a machine that's known to work. And a big part of work, like if it turns and everything goes up and down and stuff, it'll probably sew. I mean, the timing could be off, but that's not that common and easy to rectify. So, you know, the more you know about the machine's condition, the better it is. That's probably a good time to mention too, like you can take a paper towel and just get it lightly damp and wipe these things down and make a huge difference in how they look. I see a lot of ads with just filthy, dusty machines. If somebody would literally take 5 minutes to just wipe it down with a very, very slightly damp paper towel, it'll look probably like a brand new machine. Maybe not brand new, but it'll look a whole lot better. And again, that may change it from being a machine that somebody might offer you $10 for to, you know, maybe getting the $50 or whatever you think you can get for the machine. This is probably a good segue to talk about value. This is a Singer Featherweight. It's a model 221. And this machine, I see asking prices from $250 to over $1,000, largely depending on condition. There's a couple of special colors that can go for more. I think $1,000 is a lot to ask for one of these unless it's something really spectacular. These are apparently coveted by quilters for their small size and strength, being much more than you would think for a little tiny machine like this. Very, very capable little machines. I have two, both of them were given to me, and they're both of great sentimental value, so I don't have any intention to ever sell them, but I'd have a hard time paying more than, I don't even know what I would pay for one if I didn't have one. I really don't need one of these machines. But if you have one and you're planning to sell it, it's worth trying to figure out as much as you can about whether it works, what kind of condition it's in, what accessories you have with it. Maybe look up the age of the machine on Ismax if you can, because these can be quite valuable if you can find a buyer who wants it. On the other hand, I paid $150 for my Singer 1200, which is probably, I mean, I'm just guessing here, it's probably one of the rarest sewing machines, certainly one of the rarest Singers that were ever produced. The estimate that I found was that something like 6,000 of these might have been made. I don't think anybody really knows. I mean, and probably millions of Singer 201s were made. I don't know, but certainly hundreds of thousands. But and again, this is kind of a special case of the 201 because it's in an industrial style table. It has a knee lift. I'll show you that. Yeah, it has a knee lift for the presser foot. To me, this machine should be worth $1,000 or more. And I mean, I certainly wouldn't sell it for something a lot less than that if I were going to sell it. Especially because this one happens to be in quite good condition. But is this machine worth $1,000? I kind of doubt it. The fact of the matter is there's probably more sewing machines on the market than there are people who want to sew. I think there's been a bit of resurgence in interest in sewing in recent years, but new sewing machines are constantly being manufactured. So many of these things were made that I don't know that they'll ever be worth a great deal of money. Believe me, I wish they were. I'd have, you know, a fortune in sewing machines if these things were valuable. So again, there are some that are valuable, there are some that are not. The real point I'm trying to get at here is If you have a random, dirty, old, non-working or unknown to be working sewing machine that you found in your mom's attic or wherever, and you want to sell it on Marketplace, it's probably not worth $100. It's probably worth 10 to 50 depending on what it is. And the more you know about what it is and the more realistic you are about what it's worth, the better for you, because it may be that the best decision, I hate to say this, I really hate to say this, it may be the best decision is to throw it in the recycle bin. I would say before doing that, if you can, donate it to a thrift store or something, so maybe somebody who does want a real bargain can come along and get it for 10 or 20 bucks or whatever. But I see so many ads so often, and I'll give you some examples of them, with machines just priced out of the realm of realism completely. And I've many times wanted to reach out to those people and say, hey, you don't have to listen to me, but you might as well just set your expectations in alignment with the reality, rather than keep hoping somebody's going to give you $500 for a machine that's basically worthless. So there's very few machines out there that are worth $500. I'll go out on a limb and say that, other than industrial machines or newer, higher end machines, or the rare, like, again, I would want more than $500 for this machine, but I honestly don't know if I could get it. Send me a message if you want to buy a lot of money. I've sold Berninas for more than $500. Don't even know now. I've got another Bernina 830 that I'd like to get rid of. I don't know if I could get that for it these days. I don't feel like the market's that strong. I've seen quite a few advertised at prices that were lower than I would like to get for mine, and they seem to be on the market for a while. So I don't know. I'm not an expert. These things are worth whatever somebody's willing to pay you for them. But you as a seller do yourself a disservice when you ask a price that's just ridiculous for something that's not really all that valuable. And on the other hand, you also do yourself a disservice if you sell one of these for 25 bucks. So the last thing I want to talk about is misidentified or unidentified sewing machines. If you were looking to sell your machine, maybe better to have some identity, know what the machine is than nothing, than just random sewing machine. And again, this is for your benefit as a seller, because if you're selling a really nice sewing machine, you don't know what it is, and I show up and I'm like, yeah, that's not an important sewing machine, I'll give you 10 bucks for it. You might be missing out on potentially more money. And on the other hand, if you know what the model is and do a little research and find out that it's worthless, then maybe it's off to the thrift store, or give it away for free or something. So as an example of this, let's take a look at this ad. The ad says it's a 1919 Necky sewing machine. I don't know that Necky was making sewing machines in 1919, but this machine certainly is not a 1919 model. And again, this is an ad where you can't even really see the machine. The fact that it's green is more than enough to tell me that it's not a 1919, because everything would have been black back then. It'd be nice to know what it is, because it could be a very desirable machine, although $200, you'd have to make a pretty good case for it being in particularly good condition, have more info than what's presented in this ad to get $200 from me anyway. So that's just another example of, stand the machine up so it can be seen in the photos, maybe do a little bit of Googling. It really, you don't have to be a sewing machine expert to know that this is not 1919. And maybe that's a typo, but I don't know. Just obviously this person doesn't know what they're selling, and that makes it harder for me to take them seriously at that price, and easier to ignore, or easier for me to come in and lowball and impress them with my encyclopedic sewing machine knowledge and steal the machine for nothing. But this next example I alluded to earlier in the video. So this is just listed as a Singer sewing machine with cabinet, and the casual observer might not know that this is a Singer 201, but that's in fact what it is. The reason I can tell is in this particular picture, you can see the potted motor, the motor that's directly mounted to the hand wheel on the back. That means it's either a 201 or a 1591. I don't think there are any other models that have that potted motor. If I'm wrong, tell me in the comments, but I'm pretty sure it's one of those two. and I can just see enough of the head of the machine, or kind of the business end, that I can see that the tension adjustment is on the front of the machine, not on the end of the machine. If it was on the end of the machine, it would be a 1591, but this is a 201, I'm pretty sure. And again, the Singer 201 is an excellent machine. Now, from looking at the wiring and stuff that I can see, and how dirty the machine is because they didn't wipe it down with a damp paper towel, it's pretty clear to me that $30 is probably right, and it could be less if I got there and find out that there's parts missing or things broken or it doesn't work or whatever. But I've paid a lot more than $30 for 201s in my day. I've probably overpaid for some, to be honest with you, but they are really well-regarded machines, extremely high quality, so it could be worth more money than this if it were cleaned up and known to be working and things. So, but again, it would also be helpful if this seller knew what it was they were selling. So I showed a picture of this machine earlier, but talking about greatly exaggerated hopes for what a sewing machine can sell for, this one is on the extreme end of what I've seen. They're asking $160 for a machine that I would be very surprised if it currently works. I mean, that's caked in dust and seems to be missing some stuff. I have no idea what kind of machine it is, but whatever it is, it's not worth $160. I am not trying to make fun of people, by the way, for not knowing how to spell sewing, but again, a misspelling like the one in this ad does lead me to believe that this person knows absolutely nothing about this machine, along with all the other stuff in the ad. So paying attention to things like spelling sewing correctly can help you as a seller appear to be more knowledgeable about what you're selling. And in the same theme of stuff being overpriced, this vintage sewing machine desk, I mean, I guess the desk is nice. They're asking $500, and the ad does say that it contains a vintage Singer sewing machine. I know a lot more about sewing machines than I do about furniture. Maybe there's a market where that desk adds a lot of value. Doesn't to me. Most of the time the tables are a bit of a nuisance for me. And again, here's an ad for what is a very, very good machine, Singer 404. The Singer 404 is the straight stitch only version of the 403? 401. 403, maybe both. Same family of machines, but it's straight stitch only. And there are advantages to a straight stitch only machine that aren't worth really going into, but that's a very, very good machine, and there's no way I would ever pay $350 for it. This seems like a very nice one from at least this one picture. The ad had many pictures, but I don't have a copy of that. But it seemed like it was a very good condition machine. Maybe someone who is really into these particular machines would pay that. It's not quite as insane as some of the other ads I've seen, but that is a pretty high asking price. I'm going to close this video with an example that actually just happened, and I have to admit I finally fell victim to my urges. This ad just happened to catch my attention. I was looking for a few more examples. It was listed as a 1961 Singer 403A, and as soon as I saw the picture, I'm like, that's not a 403A. So what is actually here is a 328K. Now, is that good or bad? I mean, the 403 has a better reputation than the 328 does, at least to my knowledge. So, maybe that could impact the actual value or the pricing of the machine. Because if you had a 403 and a 328 in identical condition, I'd probably lean towards the 403, if for no other reason than having a better reputation. But I finally caved, and I sent a message to this seller and just said, hey, in case you're interested, I just happened to notice your ad, and that's not a 403, it's a 328K. And I was pleasantly surprised. They replied. We've actually had kind of a long conversation now about sewing machines and selling them and stuff, but they were very pleasant and grateful for the information, and that made me happy because you never know what you're going to get. I try to avoid conflicts with people, but I do want to help people know what they're selling. So this is a good example of the person has the best of intentions. I don't know where they got the impression that was a 403. Maybe they just looked at some pictures and thought that's what it looked like, but they actually changed the ad and reflected what it is pretty quickly. So, just another example of like, it's a lot better if you know what something is. And I guess if you don't know, it's better to just say, hey, I got a sewing machine, I don't know what it is. So anyway, if you are trying to sell a vintage sewing machine, I hope somewhere in here there was some information that's helpful to you. If you are perusing ads, hopefully this was entertaining or informative. If you have questions or comments, post them in the comment section below. Like, subscribe, all that great stuff. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.